All right. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. And I could not be happier to be speaking to you at this event. This is really exciting for me. And I couldn't be more stoked to be presenting what I'm presenting to you, which is how to scale your business and how to avoid doing it the wrong way. I have identified 6 things in my business that I did wrong and things that I know that other people are doing wrong. And I know that because I've been doing this a long time and I have coached and mentored and guided so many real estate investors just like you on how to scale their business. And I'm going to share a little bit about my backstory and kind of my journey in real estate so you can see why maybe you should really be listening to me when it comes to scale. All right, let's get moving. So again, why should you pay attention to me? I'm not going to read all these guys, but here's the deal. I've been in real estate since 2008. I started a podcast back in 2013, which does not make me special, certainly now. Back then, it was kind of unusual. Now everyone has a podcast. I get that. But I have interviewed some of the most unbelievably successful real estate investors on my podcast that you could ever imagine. But that's just one aspect, right? I started my business in '08, and around 2015, I really supercharged it, and I'm going to tell you how I did that and what went into that. I've written a book. I've done over 1,100 deals so far in my business. I acquired a bunch of rentals. I sold them. That's a story for a different presentation. I became a partner in a coaching company where I have coached hundreds of investors on how to scale their business. I'm pretty passionate about scale, and everybody's definition of scale is different for sure. But there's a right and a wrong way to do a lot of this. And scaling for the sake of scaling and getting big and unprofitable, not the way to do it. But this is just some of the highlights of my career so far and where I'm at, what I've done, just so you know I'm not new to this, just so you know I didn't scale up last year and now I'm preaching to you about how to scale. I wouldn't listen to me if I thought that was the case. I've been doing this a really, really long time, and I have scaled my business, and it's been scaled up for a number of years. But this was me before all of that. Before I scaled my business, before I even had my real estate business, I was a drone in the 9-to-5 world of automotive. And when I say 9 to 5, it's a little bit, I'm being a little tongue in cheek. I mean, it was like 7 to 6 a lot of times, or 7 to 7, or 8 to 7, or whatever. It was a lot of hours, 10, 12 hours a day, most weeks. Soul crushing, didn't love it. But I'm in Michigan, and I was born and raised in Michigan. My dad worked for the automotive company, and automotive, used to mean a lot, and it still does really here in Michigan. But even more so when I was going into the working world out of high school, and everybody just thought getting into automotive was the end all be all. And so I didn't get directly into automotive. I went a slightly, skewed path to get there, a little bit of a zigzag, but I ended up in automotive, and I did okay. I got into the industry at a very, very low level position, worked my way up. Eventually, I was working for a multinational company that made parts for Ford, GM, Chrysler, Honda, Suzuki, all the big automakers around the world. We produced the seats for those vehicles for a lot of those car lines, and it just wasn't rewarding though. And a lot of people I know are stuck in this 9 to 5 grind, and they don't like it and they're not happy. But I'm an impatient person, and I got into that situation. And by the way, I didn't get into the automotive industry, and then a year later I got out and had this wonderful real estate. I went, like I said, kind of a zigzag path. I was not, I was doing other things, other jobs for about, 6, 7 years out of high school, and then got into automotive. And it took me a number of years to get out of there, right? I didn't do it right away, but I did hit a point where it was just enough was enough. I really did not love my situation, was not happy, was not fulfilled. It was starting to become a real grind and affect my private life. I just, like a lot of us, I just hated it, right? But I remember there was one night, one pivotal moment in my career in automotive that changed everything for me. And it changed it for the better. It was like silver lining, bad situation, bad thing turned into a silver lining. But we had been working in this particular week all week, come in at 7. Some of the guys came in at 6. I led a team of builders. We built prototype seats for the automotive industry. We were there all week, every night till 8 o'clock, 8, 9 o'clock. Well, this happened to be a Friday. We were still there, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, working 12, 13, 14 hours, some of these guys. And everyone was burnt out. Everyone was really struggling to stay engaged and stay focused. And we all know that, those kind of hours are not productive. You're not productive the last, few hours of those days for sure. And by the end of the week, it's even worse. But we were working, we were trying to solve the problem. And I remember the customer came up to me around 8 o'clock, sort of end of the night kind of a situation on Friday. He came up to me, and I don't want to say who the customer was. You know what? Forget it. It was Ford. Ford was just awful to us. I drive a Ford, so I'm not hating on Ford, but I'm just telling you they were awful in this scenario. So he came up to me at the end of the night or toward the end of the night, and he's like, what's happening? Why is this so bad? Like, what's going on where everything seems to be unraveled on this program? Like, I want the truth. I want to know where the fault lies, like just real big on pointing at people and wanting to blame somebody for sure. And so I told him, and the truth was, it was a little bit of us, my company that I worked for, and it was a little bit of Ford. Ford, at this point in this project, they provided all the design, and then we were supposed to take those designs and build them. Well, the designs were faulty. We found some issues in their design, so our design team had to go back and forth with Ford a few times to try to work it out, and we were struggling. It wasn't working out. Anyway, I told him this. I said it was shared. Really, it was we own some of this for sure. We made mistakes along the way, but the design had some flaws, and we were trying to work through those. And as I'm explaining to him, he steps right up in my face and he says, "You are a liar." And he used a 4-letter word in there to kind of really emphasize what kind of a liar I was. But he basically got right up in my face and called me a liar. And I was like, wow. So I just excused myself from the conversation politely, and I went to talk to my boss. And I just said, "Keith, listen, this is terrible. Like, we got to send the guys home. Everyone's exhausted. No one's seen their family. I hadn't seen my family all week. None of my guys had seen their family." I said, "We're not being productive. It's 8 o'clock at night. There's nothing good is going to happen the rest of the night." And now the customer's getting belligerent and calling me a liar. And some of the guys, I think, heard it, and, it's causing issues. And anyways, he interrupted me. He didn't step in my face, but he interrupted me and said, "Hold on, stop." He said, "You need to get your priorities straight." And I was like, wow, because Keith and I had a good relationship. I always really kind of admired him as a boss. But he's like telling me, I got to get my priorities straight. And I never forget. I said, "You know what? You're right." And I walked out of his office. And what he interpreted that to mean was that I agreed with him, that my priorities were out of whack. And I did agree with him, but not the way he thought. He thought that I had a little clarity given to me that I need to put my work ahead of everything and stop complaining. What I meant when I said "you're right" was, this is not who I want to be. This is not how I want to be around my family. This is not how much time I want to spend away from my family. And this is not how miserable I want to be while doing that job. So I resolved that night that I was going to make this side hustle of real estate that I was doing on the side, that I was going to make that my escape plan to get out of that 9 to 5 and get out of that industry altogether and create my own thing where I call the shots. And that doesn't mean I won't work a lot or I won't work a lot of hours. A lot of times it does mean that, but I knew ultimately that's what I had to do. I had to get out of this situation. And so I made that my plan that night, that my side gig or my little, side project that I did, this real estate thing that I was trying to figure out slowly, I was going to amp up the pace, and I was going to push that agenda forward faster. And so I did what most people do. I went to Google, I went to YouTube, and I started letting that teach me, right? People have, it's an old saying, but YouTube University, right? I went to YouTube University and thought all the answers are out there. I don't need anybody telling me how to build a business because what I don't know is available online. And that's not untrue, but it's kind of like going into a library where there's like 5 million books. Just imagine a library, floor to ceiling, 30-foot high ceilings. They got those, those rollable ladders that kind of go down each aisle, and just there's 5 million books. And someone's saying you have to find this specific book to answer your question. And you just walk in and nobody works there. It's just a warehouse with books, lining the walls. And you have to find the book. It is there. But how long do I want to spend looking for that book? How long do I want to waste looking for that book and spending my time and my months and my years trying to figure things out? And by the way, a lot of the books in that library, just to continue with that metaphor, a lot of the books in that library tell me that they're going to solve my problem, right? They say right on the cover, like, this is what you need to build a real estate business. And I start reading them and go, wait, this isn't the right book. I put it back. And then I go to the next one. This looks like, and I read, it's not the right book. And I put it back. And so I'm getting all kinds of information, a lot of it bad, looking for the one book that will actually tell me what to do. Now, that's one way to go about it. But what if you walked into that same library and somebody greeted you at the door and said, what is it you're trying to do? And I said, I have a real estate business and I want to grow it. I want to get out of my 9 to 5. I want to grow my real estate business. I need this specific book. And that person who greets you says, no problem. I can show you exactly where that book is. And they walk over, pull it off the shelf, hand it to you, you open it up, voila, it is the book, right? That's the difference between trying to figure it out yourself when you go on the internet and on YouTube and Google and any place else, and you try to do it that way versus having a mentor or a coach or somebody who can help guide you. That was what I found. And that's when I found a group called 7-Figure Flipping. I joined 7-Figure Flipping back in 2015. Now, it's no coincidence that in 2015, I was already, I had figured out some things. And at that point, I was doing about a deal a month. On a good month, I might do 2, right? So I wasn't a beginner. I was where a lot of you are. I was doing deals consistently, but I was having a hard time scaling. I was hitting this artificial ceiling that I couldn't get past no matter how hard I worked, no matter what I did. I was in that same production level. In the automotive industry, we call it a run rate. My run rate was about $200,000 a year. Another term for run rate, or another way to phrase it, is that was my pace. That was what I was on pace to do if I changed nothing, or if I kept trying to do it on my own. I would have done about 200,000. Not bad. Not bad at all. That's not a new person. That's not a beginning business, but still not what I really wanted. So I went to the 7-Figure Flipping meeting, the first one ever. Now, you may notice the guy in the middle who's kind of doing this with his hand. That's me. I went to this meeting. This represents everybody and all the businesses that were there. There were like 18 to 20 businesses, I think, if I remember right. And some of the businesses had, a husband and wife or multiple people. And some people will just by themselves. Now, if you look, you see me doing this, there's a guy next to me in blue, and there's a guy next to him with a gray sweater on. That guy's name is Bill Allen. Bill Allen has become a great friend of mine over the years, but we were at that first meeting and we all just sat in a room and there was no frills. There was, like, I think I see a bottle of water. Somebody brought that in themselves. Believe me, there was nothing to drink. There was nothing to eat, but we sat in this room for, I think 2 or 3 days. I can't remember if it was 2 or 3. I think it was 2. And talked about our businesses, what was working, what wasn't. And it was life-changing for me. It was so amazing to just be around other people who were trying to scale and build something significant like I was, because in my market, in my hometown, in my little bubble, I was probably the most successful investor, or one of the most successful investors at the time. And when you are that and you go to a local RIA, for example, you're the celebrity. Everyone wants to ask you questions. Nobody can help you anymore because you're doing more than them. So I didn't have anyone to talk to who understood what I was trying to build. And what I was trying to build was a real estate business that did 7 figures plus, like at least 7 figures or more. That's what I wanted to build. And everybody you see in that picture, they all wanted to build the same thing, right? Maybe in a different way. Some of them were house flippers. Some of them were wholesalers. I think there might even have been a few landlords in there. But everybody wanted to have a high level of success. And another kind of a term that was introduced, I knew the term, but I didn't really think of it this way, was freedom. Everybody in that group wanted freedom of time and financial freedom. And that was a huge concept for me to really understand. I wasn't chasing money so much as I was chasing time. Now, during this time, we, as that group, that small group, we created a contest. If you're familiar with this picture and you understand the reference, not that. We had a contest where everybody in that room said, and the guy who was running it, by the way, his name was Justin. The guy who was running the group at the time said the first company to get to $1 million in gross profits in a 12-month period, he would send them to, at the time he said Hawaii, all expenses paid, but a lot of the people in that group were from the West Coast, and to them, Hawaii is not that great. It's not that amazing, right? It's not unusual. Everyone kind of vacations in Hawaii, apparently, if you're in California. I'm from Michigan. Hawaii was amazing for me, but we upgraded the contest prize to Fiji, right? So first company to $1 million or more in a 12-month, not revenue, by the way, not gross revenue, gross profits, to $1 million in gross profits would get an all expenses trip paid to Fiji. All I had to do, and I had a partner at the time in my business, and we were like, we have to call our wives and tell them this is what the contest is. And it was game on for us. It was our driving force. It gave us something to shoot for, and it gave us a time frame to shoot for. Now, in hindsight, having a short time frame like that, it got us motivated and it got us moving, and we took massive action, but it wasn't necessarily a successful formula because we really pushed it. But here's what we did. The first thing we did was we hopped on a call with somebody named Andy McFarland. Now, you guys are going to hear from Andy at some point in the next day or two here. And Andy is a mentor to everybody that I personally know in real estate who is successful. Andy was their mentor. Andy was the person who really gave them the playbook and taught them how to build a business that's sustainable, that's profitable, that's well run. And I got Andy's playbook, right? And he and I strategized a plan for getting to that $1 million. And I just implemented like a maniac and took massive, massive action. Now, they say to become a master of anything, you have to spend 10,000 hours doing it, okay? I don't know if you know this. I just learned this myself. A standard work week, a 40-hour work week, in a year, there's 2,080 hours if you just work a standard 40-hour, 5-day-a-week work week. So we essentially were taking 4 years of mastery that Andy had gained by doing this for so long. He had been doing it for more than 4 years at the time, but he was about 4 years ahead of me. Where I was when I met him and where I wanted to be took him about 4 years. And I said, and by the way, I just totally stole Andy's 10,000 hours. Like, that is really one of the massive keys to success in anything. If you can steal somebody else's, and I say steal facetiously, right? He gave me this knowledge. But if you can steal their 10,000 hours, you can shortcut a lot of things in a responsible way. The difference is, I said to Andy, it took you 4 years to go from where I am to where you are. But if you tell me everything you did in those, if you give me your 10,000 hours, shouldn't I be able to do it faster than that? Because you had to figure it out along the way. You made mistakes, right? 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 3 steps forward, 1 step back. Like, it took you longer because you had to make all the mistakes. And I should be able to do it faster than that, right? And he said, yeah, you should be able to do it faster than that. And I said, can I do it in a year? Because that's the contest. I need to do this in a year. And he's like, well, yeah, you probably can, right? And I did. And here we ended up, right? My wife and I and my partner and his wife in Fiji, all expenses paid. It was awesome. And it was awesome because everyone in that group that I showed you the picture of, especially the guy in the gray sweater who's one person away from me, super competitive. And I will say my business had a bit of a head start on his. He was much newer to the industry than I was. But everyone in this picture, super duper duper competitive. And there was a lot of trash talking and a lot of like, oh, I'm going to get there. No, you're not. I'm going to get there faster. So getting there for us was awesome. But despite the fact that we're smiling right there and we look happy, our business was really struggling because we got to that million fast. Like, this was kind of our progression, my progression from 2008, you can see like making progress, slow and steady scaling, but really slow, right? Over the course of several years, like not very fast. But I get to that inflection point in 2015, and you can see it just goes up hockey stick, right? Hockey stick growth. And it did. It went up really, really fast in a really, really short amount of time. And every time I give a presentation, I show this slide, people always want to know. They always come up to me after the presentation. What did you do right there? And what exactly, like, I don't care what you did in 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I care what you did in 15 because that's what I want, right? And it's real sexy. Everybody wants that fast, fast growth. But this is what we had. We shot up like a rocket into orbit. But along the way, we were just falling apart. Things were falling off of our rocket and we were struggling. We were hiring and firing. We were, hemorrhaging money and by being really bad at everything we did. But we like brute force got ourselves to 1 million. But we made so many mistakes and did so many things wrong. I can't even tell you. Well, I can tell you. I'm going to tell you, but I'm going to share with you the 6 things, the big 6 mistakes that people make. And these are the overarching, this is a common denominator in a lot of people's businesses that I coach and that I know who have tried to scale and failed, or scaled but really made it super hard on themselves and really regret the way they did it. There was a ton of mistakes, small ones along the way too, that I didn't put in this list because they'll kind of be captured inside of the big 6. So the big 6 mistakes. Number 1, you do not need to hire a huge team, certainly not a huge team right away. I got caught up in the philosophy that you hire for the company that you want to be. And there is a little bit of wisdom in hiring before you're in desperate need of a position or a person. I get that. But I was just hiring people like I was a $200,000 company, hiring like I was a $5 million company because that's what I wanted to be, right? That's what I thought I wanted to be. And so I became bloated really fast. Number 2, I ignored my numbers. This was one of the things that made us fall apart in orbit because we were using that bank account strategy for knowing whether or not we were doing well, right? It's like bank account KPIs. I looked at the bank account, we have money, good, we can market this month, we can pay people, great, let's just move on. I wasn't tracking any numbers and it was a huge problem. Number 3, we threw tons of money at marketing without having our numbers, right? If you market a lot and you don't know your numbers, the chances of you wasting money in marketing is really high, really high. And so we wasted a lot of money there. Next thing is because we were pushing, because we knew we had a year or less to get to that million, and we didn't just have a year, really. We had only the amount of time that the next fastest business to a million gave us, right? And so if somebody got there in 6 months, we had to get there in less than 6 months. We knew we had at least a year, like maximum, we had a year. But if somebody was on pace to get there before us, we had to go even faster. So what did we do? We started pressing. We started pressing in every encounter we had with sellers buying their homes. We were pressing and pushing, and we used high pressure sales techniques and strategies that we don't recommend and don't do now. Number 5, we put everything back into the business in terms of revenue. You need to keep money and pay yourself. You have to do that because if you don't, you're not going to feel like you're successful. And by the way, if you're married or have a significant other or whatever, if you're not bringing money in to the house and paying bills on time and keeping the stress level low with bills, the stress of the business combined with not feeling like you're making money, that you take any money out of the business, will crush you. And then last but not least, don't take on a bad partner. Partnerships in general, I would be super wary of, but bad partnerships will destroy businesses as fast as anything. All right. Number 1, don't hire a huge team. Let's dig into that a little bit. More people do not equal more business, more sales, more success. It just doesn't, okay? What I did wrong when I was building my business was I hired really, really fast. We knew that we needed to get people in the company to help us out with sales and incoming leads and working with the title company. And at the time, we were doing some like bandit signs and things like that. So we had to bring people in fast. We built this huge team. Like I said, the team that we built right off the bat, we still aren't that big, people wise, like headcount wise, because it was so unnecessary. There was so much bloat and redundancy. It was ridiculous. We trained poorly. And when I say we trained poorly, that implies that we trained. We didn't. We told them what the goal was. If it was a salesperson, for example, because that's the most notorious example. If it was a salesperson, we said, you need to get 2 contracts a week. That was what we told them right off the bat. 2 contracts a week. If you don't get 2 contracts a week, you're not going to last here. And so people came in, they started working, and then the high pressure sales obviously kicked in because they were under all this pressure. And if they didn't get us the sales, we didn't keep them very long. And that, what I just described to you, was actually the second evolution of our business. And we were burning people out. But when I say it was the second evolution, what I mean was in the beginning, we just told people, hey, you need to get 2 contracts a week, but we weren't even tracking whether or not they were getting them. And I can tell you, when it became very apparent to us that we weren't getting the amount of contracts that we told our new salespeople that we had to get, the reason we figured that out was, okay, so let's dial back a little bit. My partner, I told you I had a partner in the business. He's a salesperson. I actually hired him to be my sales guy before I got into 7-figure flipping and before I scaled. When I was just on the precipice of going into 7-figure flipping and scaling, I hired this guy as my salesperson, and he was a killer. He's great. Like, he was just crushing it. He was getting 2-3 deals. He was getting a couple deals a week, and then eventually was getting even more, 2 or 3 a week in a lot of weeks. And when we hired our first salesperson, we had a bunch of deals in the pipeline that were just waiting to close. And so my partner, his name was Mike too, but my partner went out into the field and got all these contracts, and they were in the pipeline ready to waiting to be closed. And then he stepped out of the sales position, and we put in the new salesperson, and we started giving him all the leads, and he was going out all the appointments. And meanwhile, we're closing deals and we're making money and we're growing. And I was like, this is amazing. And then all of a sudden we stopped closing deals. And I looked at my partner. I'm like, what's going on? He goes, I don't know. Like, I don't know. We've been closing deals now for the last couple of months, 3-4 months now that we've had the new sales guy. I thought he was doing great. We're closing all kinds of deals. Well, what it turned out was we were closing all kinds of deals. We were closing all the deals that my partner had put into the pipeline for us, but there were no new ones coming in. And so when all those deals finally closed and were gone, there were no more deals. And we started looking back and we realized, how did we not know that our salesperson wasn't signing contracts, wasn't making sales? Like he just wasn't doing, he was working, he was going out there, going on appointments, and there was a lot of excuses like, well, I got this, these 10 people are like ready to say yes. I'm just kind of, working that process. And it's like, okay, but you've been here for 120 days. You've not closed one single deal yet. Like, I get it. It takes some time. But anyway, so we started digging in and realized he just wasn't doing the job, right? So we had to let him go. And then the next person we brought in, we were on it, right? Like, they have to close deals. And if they didn't close deals in the first month, like, we just let them go. We just flushed them out. And so we burned through people really, really badly. I hired someone to do transactions for us. So they dealt with the title companies and made sure things got closed, contracts that we had, ready to go. She would make sure that they got closed through a title company. And I just worked her to death, like, not literally, but I worked her to the death of her employment in my company. She finally quit because, she finally told me when she was leaving, like, I wake up in the morning, I get a cup of coffee, and I sit down at my laptop. And she said, I stay at that laptop all day. And most days I fall asleep with my head on the keyboard. Like, she wakes up sometime in the middle of the night with her head on her keyboard and goes to bed, and then wakes up and does the same thing the next day. And I was just like, I was pushing her. Hey, why isn't this getting done? Why isn't this getting done? Like, what happened here? And as it turns out, she was great. And I look back and realize she's one of the people that I most regret not having still, because she was great. But because she was great, I just gave her more and more. Oh, you got that done? You did great on that? Good. Do this. And I kept pushing her and pushing her beyond what was reasonable and beyond what she was, willing to do for a company that she didn't own. And that's the other thing that you have to realize about people that you hire. They don't own the company. And even if you give them some profit sharing, which is great and goes a long way and can be helpful, they still are not the owners. They're not going to care about your company the way that you do. They just won't. And they shouldn't, really. I mean, it's great. It's like this fantasy to have employees that treat your company as if it was their own. But everyone knows the deal. If the company makes $1 billion, they don't get, $500 million or $250 million. Like, they get what they make, and maybe you'll give them a bump, maybe you'll give them a bonus, but they're not incentivized the same way you are. And you have to realize that about people. So what I decided and what we learned in our company was we gave people roles and we kept them in their lane for the most part. Now, that doesn't mean we don't do a little cross training, but what it means is I don't want my phone lead person necessarily trying to make sales calls, or I don't want my salesperson to start getting involved in the dispositions process for wholesalers, or my salesperson getting involved in the renovation part of the business. I want them doing sales. I want them making calls, talking to leads, and trying to sign contracts. That's what I want them to do. I want my marketing person to do marketing, and I want my rehab coordinator to focus on the rehab coordination. I don't want them focusing on sales or dispositions or any other part of it, answering calls. I just don't want them doing that. I want them focused on their job that they were hired to do. Because as soon as somebody thinks that their job is sort of like doing a little bit of everybody's job, then nobody has responsibilities anymore. Nobody's responsible for anything if they're kind of responsible for everything, right? It's that old saying. So what we do is we use personality assessments when we're hiring and when we're managing. We know what people's personality types are, what makes them tick, what motivates them, what demotivates them. We put the right people in the right positions. And this is critical, I think, for not just hiring, but for scaling, because you need to make sure that the interactions and the personalities of everybody kind of meshes. And when it doesn't, the people in authority, the managers, or however you label some folks in your company that have the responsibility to lead and to manage, they have to know who they're managing and how they're best managed. And so that's important for us. So some of the takeaways here is hire slower. We hired way too fast. We were putting people, in a lot of cases, also like unqualified people in these positions. So hire slow. Leadership skills matter. This is something I didn't touch on a lot over the last few minutes, but you have to learn to be a leader, because what made your business grow to the point that you could start hiring and scaling? Like finding deals, maybe marketing was a big thing for you, going out on sales calls and talking to homeowners, or if you're a wholesaler, talking to buyers, or if you're a house flipper, like getting into the project and understanding the renovation really, really well. Like whatever skill set you had that got you to where you are will not get you to where you want to be. You have to learn new skills. And the number one skill you have to learn is how to be an effective leader. You have to be an effective leader. And we weren't. We were good at operating inside of the business. We weren't good at managing the people that we hired to operate inside the business. And we learned it. It was a painful, expensive lesson for us, but we eventually got it. We eventually stopped blaming the people that we hired and saying they're all terrible. When we're on the fifth or sixth salesperson, it becomes hard to say everybody is just terrible at sales and they're so dumb and we're so smart. Eventually, we had to say, no, maybe this is us, because we're hiring people that have the right credentials, the right mindset, the right personality traits. Like we're hiring people that look like they're the right person in all categories, but they're coming into our business and failing. Why? Maybe it's us. We had to start looking in the mirror and realizing we were the problem for a lot of this. You have to define success for not just your company. The company is easy, right? Maybe your goal is as simple as we want to be a 7-figure profit business. Okay, that's fine. But you have to define success for the individuals inside of your company. The person who's answering the phone and talking to the incoming leads. What does success look like for them? The salesperson. Usually sales is a little bit easier to define, but still you have to define what success is. And then, all the other positions will follow, right? You have to make sure that everybody knows at the end of the week, at the end of the month, and at the end of the year, how do they look back, or how do you look back as the person employing them, and how do they know that they were successful or not? It can't be a moving target. It can't be a vague target. You have to have real defined, measurable things that you can use to define success for them. And then build a culture. I didn't spend a lot of time on this, and I won't, because I think a lot of people tune out, they gloss over. But I'm telling you, when you start hiring people and putting together a company filled with more than just you, the company culture matters. Now, I define the company culture as the company's personality, okay? If you think of it like your company is its own thing, it's its own entity, and that entity has a personality. If you don't know, or you don't purposefully decide and implement the personality for your business, it will have a bad one. I promise you. A culture or a personality that is ignored will become bad, and people will not like working there. So if you say, we have 4 or 5 employees, I don't know, we don't really do anything for culture, we don't really talk about it, I don't really think about it even. I can almost guarantee you that if not everyone is unhappy, some people are unhappy. You need to be real purposeful with your company culture or your company personality. And usually your company personality takes on a lot of characteristics of your personality. Because if you're like a hard driving, results oriented, you're not super, you're kind of not super friendly, for a lack of a better term. Like, you're just all business and like boom, 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 get contracts, let's go, sales, money, boom, boom, boom. Chances are that's what your business looks like too. That's how it feels to everybody inside the business. And not everyone's motivated that way. And this isn't really a touchy-feely thing. It's actually a tangible issue that some people have. They do everything else right? They're tracking their numbers, they're hiring slow, like they're doing all the things they need to do, but they're so dismissive of the culture or the vibe, if you want to use that word, inside of your company, that it ends up being kind of toxic or poisonous or just bad, and people don't like working there. Okay, let's talk about number 2, ignoring your numbers. Now, the way that I look at KPIs, or some people call them metrics, right? What are the numbers that drive your company? How do you know you're successful in your company other than looking at your bank account, right? Because even if you have $1 million in the bank, should it have been 2 million if you would have not been wasting money and time and energy on things inside your business that weren't really panning out? So you need to know your numbers. And I always like to think of it as like an instrument panel of an airplane, right? You can get, and I'm talking a little outside of my expertise here, and my friend Bill Allen is probably cringing, but I believe you can get a plane off the ground. It can become airborne without looking at a lot of instruments, right? It's not advisable, okay? But you can do it. You can get off the ground. The problem is, once you're off the ground, you're in the clouds, you can't see really well, whatever the reason. Like, you need the instrument panel very, very, very much, because you're in the sky. You're not on the ground, but you don't know how high you are. You don't know if you're kind of going down, you're going up, you're heading into a mountain or whatever, right? Something that you're going to hit. So you need that instrument panel to really guide you and tell you what's working and what's not working. A business is not that different from that. You can start making sales. You can go get a contract. You can buy a house and renovate it and sell it, and there's money in the bank, right? So you're in business. But if somebody says, how much money do you spend on marketing, or what is your average increase to the bid when you're flipping properties, you bid it, it's a $30,000 renovation, like what percentage are you usually off, either too high, too low? Like, how good are you at estimating that stuff? All these things. If you don't know, you don't know your numbers. And like the screen shows here, 82% of businesses that fail, they fail because they didn't know their numbers. So 82% is not a small amount. There's a lot of people going out of business purely because they're not paying attention to what's working and what's not. I have two kinds of metrics or KPIs that I really pay attention to in my business. I'm not going to get deep into them, but one of them is called, I call them results KPIs. They're like leading indicators. And then results KPIs are lagging indicators. Activity KPIs are leading indicators, right? What is the activity KPIs? What are the activities that lead to the results? You can't, or you shouldn't, just measure results in your business. Results are important, right? Results tell you how it turned out. It's like finishing a book, like you know how it ended, but what went into it? Like if it ended poorly and you look at your results I'm just using kind of an extreme example, but if you look at your results on December 31st for the year and you did not make the amount of money that you wanted to make, you didn't make the amount of profits you wanted to make, you didn't hit your goals, but you have no way of really knowing exactly why. You just know you didn't. It's too late. You can't go back in time. You can't go back to January and figure it out and fix it so that December looks a little better. You're there and it's in the past. And so activity KPIs, it's the things that we track in our business that we know with relative certainty, if we hit our activity KPIs, the results will follow. Now, I said, you make a goal in January, you check at the end of the month in December. That's obviously ridiculous. You need to be looking at even your results a lot more often than that. Every day is too much, in my opinion. Once a week to look at some numbers is probably appropriate, but probably once a month, looking at all of your company's numbers is pretty great. If you check KPIs too often, there will be false negatives, is my point. You'll freak out if you check them daily and they don't, because it's never going to work out that cleanly. So if you're checking daily, you're going to freak out. It's false negative, it's false positive, false negative, whatever. But if you check it once a week, it's a little more clear. Once a month, a lot more clear. You can't go many months not hitting goals before the year-end goal is in jeopardy or completely out of reach. So you want to check both the results, but also like the activities. You want to have numbers built around that so that you know that you're doing the activity that will get you to the result. Okay, number 3, throwing tons of money at marketing. Now, this one is important because there was a time when I did throw a lot of money at marketing, almost all of it, but you can't do that all the time. You can't always do it from the beginning. And the reason I was able to do it for a time was I kind of had a unique path not unique, but an interesting path that I took to get to where I am. It started off, I told you I was working in the automotive industry and I was doing this part-time. And so what I did was I took, and I wasn't, I was flipping, by the way. And so I was buying off the MLS. So I wasn't doing marketing at all. So I was taking the profits from that and I was just saving it. I didn't need it to live because I had a full-time job. So I was saving it. So when I finally quit my job and went out on my own, I almost immediately switched over to wholesaling. Somewhere around 2014, I switched to just wholesaling. And again, the reason why I did that, it's not because wholesaling's better or worse. I just had circumstances in my business that made switching over to wholesaling made sense for me. But the point is, I saved the money that I had made flipping for the past, handful of years before that. And when I went into wholesaling, I was able to put a lot of that money toward marketing because I had this like treasure chest of money that I had saved in order to get into it. So I just put tons of money in marketing. But at some point, we had to make sure that the money coming in and the money going out wasn't all of it, like all the money coming in and went out, because we wouldn't be able to pay ourselves, me and my partner. We wouldn't be able to pay our employees. Like that's obviously a bad situation. I really recommend a book that's called Profit First. If you haven't read it, you should. If you have read it, you're probably nodding. You know what I'm talking about. But Profit First is a great book. But the basics of it, if you just boil it down to its most basic thing, is you create buckets for everything. Buckets for payroll, buckets for profit, for sure, a bucket for marketing, a bucket for overhead, just general overhead for your business, a bucket for taxes, right? And the buckets that you create is a little bit flexible. They give you recommendations, but at the end of the day, there's a bucket for marketing, and you decide ahead of time how much of what percentage of my revenue or my profits coming in are going to be allocated to marketing. And that's what you spend on marketing. Not all of it. You don't take all the other buckets and go, well, I didn't make a lot this month, so I'm going to take all the other buckets and dump it into marketing, and everybody just has to suck it up. No, that's not how you do it. You have a bucket for marketing, and you spend the money that you allocate for marketing on marketing, and you learn to get good at using the money that you have. What happens sometimes is people go, well, I'm doing marketing, it's not working, I'm just going to throw all the money in there for a month or two, and just everyone's going to have to just like be understanding, right? And then you do that, and pretty soon you teach yourself not to be good at marketing or to check your marketing KPIs, to be real diligent about tracking that stuff. You just teach yourself, you'll just make up for it with just throwing more money at it. And that is a recipe for disaster. So your marketing has to be effective, but so does your surrounding cast, okay? So I will tell you, I've talked to so many people, and I really kind of consider myself to specialize in certain kinds of marketing for my business. That was part of my responsibility in my business, was marketing. And so people have come to me and said, I'm doing this marketing, whatever it is, direct mail or cold calling, whatever it is, I'm doing it and we're not making money. Like we're not closing any deals, but I'm doing a lot of marketing, and I think the marketing is terrible. So I need to either spend more money or do better marketing. And my first thing is like, hold on. There's a lot of things that will affect, because you're talking about marketing is at the front of the funnel, right? And then at the back of the funnel spits out cash or revenue for you, right? So you're telling me this thing you're doing at the beginning isn't spitting out the cash at the end of the funnel. And so you think the thing at the beginning is the reason. And it might be, but there's a bunch of places along the way in that funnel that affect whether or not you're making money or how much you're making. But you're just telling me it's marketing. And so I will inevitably sit down with these people and say, okay, what are you doing for marketing? Okay, great. What are your numbers? Either they don't know or they tell me. And sometimes they'll tell me the numbers and the numbers are good. So I'll go, okay, so you think it's the marketing, but you're telling me you're spending this much and this is what you're doing. It's not turning into money. Well, how many leads are you getting? Well, they're getting a lot of leads. It's like, okay, so you're doing marketing and it's producing a lot of leads and you're not making money at the end of the funnel. Is it possible it's the person who's taking those leads into your company, right? Whether it's a phone person or whoever it is, who's the first person to touch that lead. Is it possible they're not doing a good job? Well, I don't know, like we're setting up a ton of appointments. Like all these leads are turning into a ton of appointments for our sales guys. Okay. Is it possible your sales guy's not doing a good job? Like, is it possible they need to be better, right? And then we start doing this forensic diagnosis of what's going on. It turns out their marketing's fine. It's like all the things are in their business that touch that lead or affect the money coming out at the end. That's where the problem is. So it's not about just throwing more money at marketing. It's about understanding the rest of your business as well and what's going on there. So here are the 9 things that affect your marketing success or failure. Number 1, marketing strategy, right? We talked about that. What's your target market? Maybe you're marketing in a place that isn't great. It's not a good idea. It's not conducive to your goals. What's your budget? Maybe you are not spending enough. Maybe you are, and it's just, you're not, there's other things going on. You're not tracking your KPIs. You don't know what's happening. When I say, how many leads are you getting based off of this marketing spend or this marketing effort? I don't know. Okay, well, that's not a good answer. What's the message? Whatever you're using for marketing, whatever you're doing, what's the message? If it's cold calling, what are you saying when they pick up? If it's a letter, what does the letter say, right? What is the message? First touch, the lead manager, what are they saying? What are they doing? How are they handling the leads? Your salesperson, how are they closing? High pressure sales close, right? They're desperate because they're not closing enough and they're just cutting their nose off to spite their face on these appointments because they're just terrible. Short-term follow-up. What are your salespeople doing when they don't get the contract? How are they following? Are they following up? And how are they following up? Long-term follow-up. These things, the salesperson tries for a couple weeks, a month, whatever, and they say, okay, these folks are not selling right now, but I think there's still some opportunity down the road. Good. Goes into your CRM, and you do long-term follow-up. Oh, you don't have CRM. You're not using CRM. Okay. Well, maybe that's a problem, right? Because you don't have any long-term follow-up, because these leads just die. If you don't get them within the first couple of weeks, they just disappear, right? You're not keeping track. Okay, number 4, high pressure sales. We've touched on this a little bit. I didn't handle sales in my company, I'll tell you that. But what I can tell you for sure is high pressure sales is not effective in most cases. Just trying to convince them, and that's the key. Once you get into a situation with a seller where you're trying to convince them to sign the contract, you've lost, okay? And I'll tell you a quick story. So we had a sales guy who was really, really good. And he went on an appointment, and he's on the appointment, he's talking to the seller, all of a sudden, knock at the door. And the seller says, "Oh, I'm really sorry. I have another company coming out and talk to me, and they're early. So I apologize. Is it okay if I get the door?" My guy said, "Sure, go ahead and get the door." So she goes and gets the door. A guy walks in. 2 things that my guy noticed right away. Number 1, he was in a suit and tie, dressed in his Sunday best, right? Now, the house that we're talking about here was in a middle-class neighborhood, regular working folks. The husband and wife that my guy was talking to were just dressed in jeans and a t-shirt, just casual. This guy walks in, Sunday best. Second thing my guy noticed was his car in the driveway was in a very expensive car. I don't remember what the make was anymore, but I think it was a Mercedes. I can't remember, but it was expensive. He left it running. He didn't turn it off. Came in the house, started firing questions at the homeowners. He didn't even acknowledge that there was somebody else there. He just started firing questions. How old is it? Wow, what is this? How old's the roof? Like, what do you want for it? And he didn't even walk around the house, and he fired off an offer to them verbally. Just a crazy low offer. He didn't spend more than 5 minutes trying to understand what was going on. The homeowner said no. He basically said, "Your loss." He left, got in his car, drove away. And my guy observed all of this. And once he left and the door was closed, he said, "Wow, that was rude." And the homeowners were like blown away. Like, yes, that was insulting, right? It was just high pressure. Don't care about you. Don't care about your situation. Don't want to hear your motivation. It was just turn and burn, right? Turn and burn. Like, what do you got? What do you want? This is what I'll give you. Nope. Okay. Next. Boom. Going on to the next one. High pressure sales, right? That it's a turnoff for most people. It works on very few people. Most people immediately get defensive when you start getting high pressure. Why do people use it? They don't have good sales skills. Their skills are bad, or they're non-existent. Fact. They're desperate. They need to close a certain amount of deals for whatever reason. Maybe they have overhead, expenses, whatever it is. They're desperate. And desperation is the worst cologne, right? You've heard that saying. It's just the worst. People can tell when you're desperate. You don't want to come off desperate in a situation like that. Okay, number 5, pumping every cent back into the business. Now, this is different. This isn't just about marketing. This is about your business in general, right? I talked to you about profit first. There has to be a profit bucket where that profit is you. It's what you pay yourself, okay? If you dump everything back into the business, you're going to feel unsuccessful, right? It's sexy to say, "Oh, I made all this money and we put it right back into the business. Like we invest in our business." That's good. It sounds good, but it's not smart to do. Not all of it, right? Revenue does not equal success. And you might be saying, "Well, wait a minute. You're talking about trying to get to 7 figures in this contest that you were in. We're talking about scaling and money." Revenue doesn't equal success. Profits equal success. Revenue does not. Revenue is a vanity metrics, a metric that is misleading. It's really misleading a lot of times, right? I don't care that you made $10 million. I want to know how much you kept. Because if you make $10 million and you keep 0, and the next guy makes $1 million and keeps half of it, who's more successful? The guy with the revenue or the guy with the profits, right? It's the guy with the profits. So profits are success. Active income only puts you on a treadmill. Now, in my company, We were wholesalers from 2000 and maybe 14-ish forward. And for a lot of those years, we were just putting things under contract and then selling them to buyers and just rinse and repeat, right? Over and over again. We were keeping nothing. So we were on that treadmill. It was all active income. If you don't take your chips off the table once in a while, you will never feel successful, even if you win, right? So maybe you have a year where you do $1 million and your profits on that $1 million are 500,000, but you put all 500 back in the business, right? You just clean out that bank account and you spend it on whatever you spend it on, okay? At the end of the year, you're doing what your business is doing well on paper, but you're not, right? Your personal budget, your personal income, your family income is not good. You will not feel good. And if you are married or in a relationship or whatever, you may be willing to deal with that. You're still not going to feel successful. But I promise you, it's not going to be good for your relationships if you're not bringing some of that money home. My wife and I, early on when we were flipping houses, every time we flipped a house, no matter how much we made, we would go out to a very expensive dinner, right? Spend a couple $100 on dinner just to celebrate that win. And, early on, especially, we had deals that we only made a couple $1,000s. Like we just didn't, it wasn't great. We messed up. Okay. And we made a couple $1,000 or $1,000 and we'd go out and still spend that money. In some deals, we made 15,000, 20,000, and we'd go out and we'd spend a lot of money in a meal. But it was our way of making sure that we acknowledged that we were doing something good and that we should be rewarded for it. But more than just a meal, you got to make sure that your bills are paid and you're not stressing out the family because you're trying to dump all your money back into your business. Not smart. You want to build a freedom mindset, okay? I talked about this early. A money mindset or having this mindset of revenue and financial goals, that's great. Financial freedom is great. I believe, and it's my personal opinion, that when people say they want to be financially free, what they mean is they want to be free. They're just throwing financial in front of it because they feel like that's the thing that's making them not free, is they're constantly worried about money. And they're not necessarily wrong. But financial freedom, I believe, is freedom. Like freedom. It's freedom of time, which is really, really what people want. I want to be able to do what I want, when I want, and not have to worry about money. Okay, so financial freedom is really just code word for freedom. And profit beats production every time, right? We kind of said this a minute ago, but profit is better than the number of deals you're doing, right? The guy or lady who does 100 deals but has nothing to show for it, no money at the end of the day because all their deals are bad or low profit, or they're taking all their money and putting it back in the business, whatever it is. Profit is what we want to look at here, okay? Profit, not revenue. Okay, number 6, don't take on a bad partner. 70% of all businesses fail within the first 5 years because of bad partners. It happens more often than you would believe. And most people partner for all the wrong reasons. And one of the biggest reasons that people partner in not in just real estate, but in business, is they feel isolated. They feel alone. They have nobody who really understands what they're going through, and nobody to share this with, or they want someone that they can bounce ideas off of, or somebody who can help them solve the challenges in their business. And so they take on a partner and they give them 50% of the business because they feel alone. They're lonely, right? Most people who partner should hire somebody to fill that role, right? And it could be operations manager. It could just be an employee, somebody in your business that, is a rock star, and you start bouncing ideas off of them. Give them that responsibility to give you that feedback and be that person. But when people partner for the wrong reasons, it ends up poorly a lot of times, and that will crash your business. Even a business that otherwise might have been successful, a lot of times will crash and burn because of a bad partnership. Now, there's a lot of benefits of partnering. I know that, right? There's someone in the trenches with you. I talked about that. You don't feel alone. You can take some time off maybe, and you have somebody who cares just as much as you do running things while you're gone. It can increase the potential of the business, reduce the headcount early on because, like I said, I partnered with my sales guy, so I didn't need to hire a sales guy. He wasn't my sales guy. Even when I partnered with him, he was my sales guy. And then checks and balances, somebody who will kind of hold you accountable. When you're taking on a partner, and this is a much can be, I've given whole presentations on partnerships, like whole presentations. So I'm going to run through this kind of fast, but I want you to really understand that this is super important. They need to have identical risk tolerance to you, meaning if they're super risk averse and they're scared to spend money on marketing, for example, or whatever, they may not be a right partner. Unless you're scared of it too, right? You just have to be the same. Alignment of goals. Their goals and your goals need to be the same, and you need to discuss short and long-term goals. Common hunger. One person can't work 3 days a week for 4 hours a day and call it a week, and the other person's working 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. That will be a conflict. Complementary skill set. If you're great at sales, don't partner with someone who's great at sales. It's redundant. It's unnecessary. You want someone who is strong where you're weak, and where they're weak, you're strong. So make sure that your skill sets are complementary. Now, final thoughts here, guys. When it comes to my business, and I did a lot of things wrong, I told you I was pretty, candid about some of the mistakes we made. What was my cost? What did it cost me to scale the wrong way? The honest to God truth is I don't know. I know that the number is a 7-figure number, though. It's not a 6-figure number. It's not a 5-figure number. It's a 7-figure number. I know this for sure. There's a lot of things that we did that cost us 7 figures over the last decade, by the way. Not last year or not in the first year, but over the last decade, some of the mistakes we made cost us definitely in the 7 figures. It doesn't have to. You do not have to make these mistakes. Remember the analogy I told you earlier about the library with 5 million books, and you're looking for one book, but there's a lot of books with similar titles that are not what you're looking for, and they're just bad information. Like, that's what's out there. So it's out there, trust me. But it's a needle in a haystack. It's one book out of 5 million in a library with 30-foot high ceilings and books, floor to ceiling. You need someone to hand you the right book. That's what I had. That's what 7-figure flipping was for me. That's what Andy McFarland, who was my mentor, was to me. He handed me the right book. There was a lot of people trying to hand me the wrong books at that time. He handed me the right book. Scaling is great. You should try to scale. Everybody's goal of scale is different. Some people might be, they want to make a $10 million. Some people want a $100 million company. Some people want a $1 million. Some people want a $500,000 company. That's fine. It's all good. There's no judgment on what scale is to you. But you have to do it the right way, because doing it the wrong way can cost you 7 figures. It can cost you your time. It can cost you relationships. It's not worth it when there's a better way. Scale the right way, guys, and get help where you need it. All right. Thank you.